improvements to Dynasty mode for College Football 26 look awesome. If you haven't checked out my video breaking down the biggest things that were revealed, then go give it a watch right here. In the comment section of that video, I got a lot of questions about features that were included in the game that people wanted and were disappointed that weren't in there, or they wondered whether or not they would be in. It got me thinking about stuff that I want for a more diverse and realistic experience in Dynasty. So I decided to make a video about all the things that would make the game mode a lot more fun, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to split them into tiers of importance so that way we can get a better understanding of where I think the priorities should be when talking about these additions to Dynasty. So we're going to start with the most important things that I think should be added into this game to create a more realistic and dynamic experience within your universes. The first one is going to be custom/dynamic rivalries. So being able to change rivals would be massive. And it would be an especially nice addition to online dynasties when you have two players that really don't like each other or they talk a lot of crap to each other, that you can make them rivals if they're not at the same school, so that way, the game might schedule them out of conference, or the game has a little bit more stakes than just a, non-conference regular season game. Dynamic rivalries, though, I think would be the step up off of just custom rivalries. Let's say you keep meeting the same team in a conference championship game or in the playoff every single year. Well, now you guys have what is considered a success rivalry. You're both really good football programs and you keep meeting each other. So now you have a rivalry because of that. Now, this would work like the 2K rivalry meter in My League. And it's one of the cooler things I think that My League does that a lot of other sports games don't really do that I wish they did. The more you play a specific team and have close battles and really, interesting games and big time moments, the more likely you are to develop that team as a rival. It would add an extra element of what we see in real life. And a great example of this is Penn State and Ohio State. They're not historical rivals, but both teams are at the top of the college football world. They began seeing each other as such because they were beating each other, and it was more one-sided, but they were consistently in each other's ways for a conference title, with the Big Ten East being as stacked as it was. Having that opportunity in your dynasty would be phenomenal. It would allow for so many more paths to create rivals than just keeping track of them in your head. So I think that would be a just great addition to the game. I also think upgrading facilities would be huge, especially for the immersion and the overall upgrading your team. So the most annoying thing, in my opinion, about playing as a low-tier group of 5 school is your stadium will never change no matter how good you get. You won 5 straight national championships as Kennesaw State. Have fun playing in your 18,000-seat stadium as you look to win your 6th and win the SEC. As your team gets better and moves to a better conference, you should have the ability to upgrade your stadium. Add seating, add boxes, add a second deck. The fact that we can't do this yet is super frustrating. And it should work with the same way in weight rooms and practice facilities and other aspects of your dynasty. You should be able to upgrade your facilities as your program upgrades its on-field play. And they had this kind of sort of in NCAA basketball. You could upgrade your facilities and it would give you certain upgrades to your program. So like attribute boosts and other different things that would help your overall team. To me, that would greatly increase immersion within the dynasty. And it would have a direct impact on recruiting as well. The more you upgrade the facilities, the more that grade changes. And instead of on-field production, it's on-field production leads to being able to upgrade your facilities, which then leads to that grade getting better. Just something that I think we could add pretty easily because they've done it before and make your dynasty experience that much better. Another one that I talked about in my house rules video that I think you should absolutely check out if you haven't is recruiting sliders / prospect generation. So we're going to focus on the recruiting sliders first. And to me, it's an absolute must because I shouldn't have to put rules on myself to make recruiting more difficult. There needs to be a slider that makes other teams essentially sharks in the water. When they smell blood, they're going to pounce. I want recruiting to be that a perfect fit is needed to land 4 and 5 stars. They're not going to take, especially at a smaller school, but even the bigger schools, they're not going to go to a school that doesn't have A's and B's and the things that they're looking for. That is what I want out of my recruiting experience, and you can't have that in the way that the game is set right now. Other sports games have sliders on free agency and trading, and the difficulty in those things. So why can't we have a recruiting slider in college football games that we use to make it harder to get guys on our team, rather than imposing self-sanctioned house rules to try and keep the game challenging in the team building aspect? Now, focusing on the prospect generation, they've done a pretty good job of fixing unrealistic prospects in college football 26. And you know what I'm talking about, the white corner that consistently popped up when those just don't exist. So we got it. They gave it to us, and that's awesome, except we still don't have generational type recruits in our recruiting pool. Where are our Jeremiah Smiths, our Trevor Lawrences? Why don't we have guys that come in immediately at 90 overall and are instant impact type players? Those exist in college football, yet we never get them in the game. The highest I've seen in this game is an 84 overall. That was an athlete that ended up being a safety. I believe it was a strong safety. Other than that, the actual position player was an 81 overall. Jeremiah Smith was a 90 overall in college football last year. Trevor Lawrence in his freshman year was a 90 overall. We need those type of players in our dynasties for realism purposes, because we see it every single year. Freshmen are making instant impacts, and by their sophomore year are mid 90 overalls, and we've seen that a lot with especially last year's freshman class. So you should generate 90 overall recruits that will start on day one, but there's a guarantee that they're going to leave after 3 seasons, so people don't cheese by redshirting them a year. These guys are meant to start immediately, and you got 3 years to use them as best as you can to win a national championship. Another big one that I consider very important is the sim engine just being a little bit more realistic. And there's got to be a way to, again, with the recruiting sliders, have a slider that determines how tough your simulation games are. There's this, and I believe NBA 2K has this. Why is it that the entire sim engine makes 0 sense? And if you saw my Ohio University rebuild, you'll notice I had the best team in the MAC for 5 straight seasons, yet it took me until year 6 in the conference in order to win my first conference title. It makes 0 sense the way the game sims, and we need a more, I don't want to say uniform because that's not really the word I'm looking for, but we need a better way to make sure that the powerhouses consistently win. Now, you still want to balance it well enough so you have your Northern Illinois over Notre Dame victories, but it feels like it's far too often than what we actually see in real life. And maybe you just take the statistics from real life and put that into the game so that, 1% of the time that a top 25 or top 10 team plays a non-ranked team that's under, 78 overall, they win, like I said, 1% of the time. Maybe it's something like that, but we just need a better way to have the sim engine make sense and be realistic, because it takes away the fun of the team building if your team is a 95 overall, but it's consistently losing games because of that sim. And it also makes your actual universe seems way too easy if your opposing teams you're competing with to get in the college football playoff have 3 or 4 losses to teams that they are vastly better than. And this isn't just, they're losing to one team that's really bad and then a bunch of good teams. They're losing to 3 actually bad teams that they shouldn't be losing to. So that is something that we absolutely have to fix as well. Players following you to your new job is also a must. In real life, we see it all the time. A coach leaves, the players will follow. This happens at every single level, right? When Bob Chesney left from Holy Cross to JMU, he brought a bunch of his guys with him because a lot of the guys that were already on JMU left to go to Indiana to be with Kirk Cignetti. Some will stay, and that is a given, yes. But a lot of guys leave. Others will leave to go to a different school. But the fact that you are more likely to get none of your old players to follow you than a single one is kind of ridiculous and very unrealistic. The next section is important, but not dire needs in your dynasty. The first one is coach mode. I had a lot of people on my house rules video comment about my no usering on defense or using in defensive linemen to make things more fair. And I knew this was going to be a point of contention for a lot of people when I made that, because a lot of people do like to user on defense. And I specifically got a comment about usering the quarterback on offense and how it's essentially the same thing. And to that, I counter, well, I can't not be the quarterback on offense. There's literally no way for me to play the game without being the quarterback. There is a way for me on defense, and that's using the defensive line to have the least amount of impact on the game possible. If they gave me coach mode like we had in NCAA 14, I'd be able to call the plays, make substitutions, and control the game plan without controlling the players, and then it wouldn't even be a problem. Like there wouldn't even need to be a house rule for that, because I would just do coach mode because I have so much fun with the team building aspect of the game. Don't get me wrong, I love playing the game, but I really like when the players' ratings get to control what happens on the field. It makes it feel more realistic to me. True conference customization would also be awesome. And for me, this is really about being able to control every aspect of every conference in the entire country. So if I want to bring back the Southwest Conference, I should be able to bring it back, but not just having the teams in the modern day Big 12. I want to be able to change the name of the conference to the Southwest Conference and import that logo into it so it appears on the stadium, fields. It appears on the jerseys for the patches. I want all of that. I want to add more conferences to the league. I want to dismantle other conferences and completely change the landscape of college football. My ideal for promotion and relegation would work so much better if I had full conference customization. And I understand that this is never going to happen because of licensing purposes, but think about all the creative things that you can do and all the creative content that YouTubers could make to really just have the most fun possible within your dynasties. I think that would be awesome if they gave us that type of control. Playing both sides of the ball and playing non-user games. And for that first one, it's not playing offense and defense, it's being able to play both offenses. In NCAA 14, you had the ability to switch sides in the middle of your dynasty game. And some people would have a house rule where they played offense for both teams. And the reason they did this was because it made it so that there was a level playing field. It's not a possibility anymore in college football 25. And while only a few people would use this, it limits what they're able to do with their dynasty, and they're not able to get the full experience that they want to. And for me, I think you should be able to have full control of your experience. I don't think it should be limited by the framework of the game just because it's simply not in there. We've seen it done before. It's not like it's not possible. So we would like it back so that people can play the way that they want to. I'd also like more detailed coach statistics. Like, I want to see my record against specific teams, coaches, and conferences. Like, we have access to all of that stuff in real life. And I know it's real life. It's not a coded video game, so it's not exactly the same thing. It doesn't seem like it would be that hard to implement into the game, though. And I say this as a not video game developer. I really don't know the first thing about developing video games, so it might be super hard to do. Not really sure, but it would add so much more immersion in your dynasty. Say you're in year 16 and you want to check in on your coach just to see where you are. You find out for whatever reason that you have a 500 record against Sunbelt teams, or that one specific team is giving you a lot of problems and you're 3-8 against them. Now, you can keep these stats yourself, and that is something that I have done and continue to do. But those little details being in your dynasty would just be so much more immersive from a storytelling perspective with specific dynasties. Just not having to keep track of it all yourself. It would be really awesome. And then you could have little pop-ups and graphics in the game saying, hey, this is your head-to-head record against this specific coach. You guys played each other when you guys were at group of 5 schools. Now you're at the Power 5, and you've been battling it out there. I just think that would be so much more immersive for that dynasty experience. I also would love dynamic crowds, and I know they're doing a pretty good job with giving you some options in your crowd shots and varieties, but it just feels like they're way too static right now in their reactions. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that feels this way, but I just feel like the crowd doesn't actually play that big of a part in the game or the immersion other than the Stadium Pulse feature. Maybe it's just the body models and how everything looks the same. I'm not really sure. But I'd also like to see game day specific crowd movements. And so if you're at a noon kickoff for an unimportant non-conference game, the stands should not be full at kickoff. And frankly, they shouldn't be full at any point during the game, no matter how good you are, because nobody is going to want to see you beat FCS West by 65 points in week 2 of the season, right? That game just doesn't have this same oomph that some of the other games on your schedule should. And it should work the same way if you're being blown out or getting blown out by a team. When the fourth quarter hits, fans should be leaving to beat traffic. That is realistic. Like, if you're up by 52 points in the fourth quarter, even your own fans aren't going to stay and watch that game. They're going to start heading to the bars. They're going to start heading home. If you're the home team and you're getting blown out, say it's a top 25 matchup and you're down by 40 points, fans are going to start to leave. They're not going to stay and watch that. This gives you more of an immersive feel for how the game is going, but it also makes those rivalry games feel that much more special because right now they feel like every other game on your schedule. But imagine if those specific games, the stands are absolutely packed, no matter if you're good or bad, because like you're watching the game right now, Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee State, those stands are packed every time those two teams play, no matter how good those teams are, because it's a rivalry game. That's just something I'd like to see from an immersion standpoint to really make it feel like those rivalry games are important and those big top 25 matchups are important because they just feel like regular games as it is right now. I like a legit game of the week too because this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves from College Football 25. The game of the week was really just two SEC teams. You could have a top 5 matchup in the group of 5, and they would go to some 25 versus unranked SEC matchup for God knows why reason. It would be like Georgia versus Oklahoma, and it's because of the brands, I guess, but please give us an actual game of the week that is the best matchup of the week and not just two subpar SEC teams. Please and thank you. Now, before I get into the last section, comment any suggestions that you have. So I saw a couple on that last Dynasty video that I talked about. But, if we talk about those specific suggestions enough, the devs have shown that they will listen and implement some of these things in the game. So let's create a conversation of things that we want so that we can eventually get them in the game. The not super important, but would add extra immersion for a better experience ones. A weekly Dynasty show / game day presentation. How cool would it be to have a weekly show that takes you around the country, giving you important updates on the Heisman race, conference races, CFP bracket, players of the week, and anything else important for your specific team. It's like matchups of teams in your conference, your rival, stuff like that. And I always think back to the Aaron Andrews segments in the NCAA 13 Road to Glory. I always really love those. And, maybe it's a nostalgia thing, but I think they added a lot of immersion to the Road to Glory. And I think that you can have that in Dynasty and having a game day presentation. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the game of the week. They present from the campus of where the game of the week is, and they do their picks. They talk about your game in a little bit of detail with, stats and names to watch, just a little bit of something. And maybe people would skip this and skip your weekly Dynasty show. But, man, I think people feel differently about college football than they do Madden, than they do NBA. There's just something cult-like about how people that are college football fans feel about the world of college football. And I think all of that immersion that you add to their Dynasty universe would be something that they really get behind and immerse themselves in and watch that every single week, as long as, there's enough variety in it and it's not the same thing every single week. I think that would be a fantastic addition. I think having press conferences would be really fun as well. You imagine you suffer a brutal loss at the hands of your rival, and then you got to answer questions about your decision-making in a post-game press conference, why your team didn't do well. I think that would be so much fun. And I think you would have to make this really interesting in order to keep players engaged, because other sports games have tried to do this in the past, and the way that they have done it hasn't really been met with much enjoyment. They just didn't implement it in a great way. I think a way that you could do it where it was impactful and it mattered is that your answers have an actual impact on the world that you're in. If somebody asks you a question about how your starting quarterback played and you say he played bad, he will come out cold the next game or something like that, like stuff like that. Or you talk crap about a rival and give a confident answer about something, they come out a little bit hot, because of that bulletin board material type stuff. So I don't know. I think you could implement it in a way that could be super fun and add a lot to your Dynasty. But that's one, it's in this section for a reason. It's not super important, but I do think it would make your Dynasty universe a lot more, immersive. Like I keep saying, that immersion is so important to me. I think award shows, along with, that same presentation of your weekly Dynasty show and your college game day, I think having an award show presentation would be fantastic. And the big one is the Heisman. As long as you have that, I think it's okay to not have the other ones. But imagine you get to New York, you see the 5 finalists, and you have no idea who's going to win it. The presentation goes through each season that the finalists had, and they have some highlights in there, and then bang, they announce the winner. He goes up there, he accepts it. How cool would that be? You know, imagine if one of your players was in there and he won the Heisman. Think about the just joy you would feel watching that and the surprise because of the suspension they build up. And you can carry that over to RTG too, to have that Heisman ceremony in it for those players. So, you know, that's just an idea that I thought of that I think could be a lot of fun. And it's something little, and I don't know how much time it would take to put this in the game, right? Because I'm not a video game developer, but I think it would be so much fun. And the last one is team builder input. And this is kind of just another pet peeve of mine. Getting rid of a team in order to add your team builder is just so annoying and something I wish that we could change. And I have a feeling that they can't because of the scheduling matrix that they have coded into the game. That's probably a pain in the butt to deal with. But it's super annoying to have to take on the history, recruiting, and the pipelines of the team that you take out. So if I'm a team from Montana and I want to kick out UMass because they're an independent school that's not very good, doesn't have a lot of great history, I shouldn't have UMass's pipelines and pitches. They are two opposite places in the country that are completely different. The fact that I am now essentially UMass is really annoying, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and is why I kind of stay away from team builders, because there are specific teams that if I am putting a school near these other locations, I want them to be my rivals. I don't want it to be that I have to, you know, essentially recruit. I'm not recruiting against the same guys because proximity to home is so important. So I hope they fix that because especially with the new recruiting visits in College Football 26, proximity to the school is going to be super important. And so if you pick a school that's across the country, are you going to be able to get those recruits, or is it going to be the recruits that are near the actual campus that you want your place to be? I'm not really sure, but it's going to have to be something that somebody figures out eventually, because you can't have that. That is all I have for you today. Remember to put any of your suggestions in the comments, because I think, again, if we talk about it enough, the devs are going to see it and it will get put in the game. They've shown us that they will do that, and I think that is a great use of our resources and time. Remember to hit that subscribe button on your way out. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the flip. See ya.